how do you create these beautiful visuals, and how do you keep people engaged in kind of online remote meetings and planning meetings?
I mean, for starters, it's the same question around gathering the people who care about the young person and trying to get all the right people gathered. But obviously it's on Zoom or it's on Teams or whatever sort of platform people are using. So there's still the gathering, so we still have the people there. And we're still trying to keep it as interactive as possible. So the breakout rooms, just so fortunate they were part of the technology, because we've used them a lot in this way of working. So breaking down to 2s, into 3s, into 4s that you'd probably do if you were doing this work live to maximize participation. You were able to use with the breakout rooms, fortunately. And obviously, you know who's in the gatherings. So you can kind of ask people direct questions as well, again, to maximize participation. So still, we've kept the interactivity. We've still been able to use props. So I've still got a bag full of props here that I can kind of reach for, and you know, anything can kind of pop out from the props bag. We obviously got the magic wand still in play, and keys, and you name it, really. So I mean, because people are looking at a camera with a video, they can see the prop. They can't hold the prop, but they can certainly see it. That's kind of helped with the kind of props.
So you've not lost any of that kind of richness that you get from using the props by doing it online. You can still, we've has the same effect.
Exactly. We've really tried to do that. I mean, you can't smell the prop, you can't get hold of the prop, but you can at least see the prop. So I think that has certainly kind of helped in that respect. And then in terms of the practicalities around kind of creating what is normally a big wall-shaped graphic online for people, well, Elliot, perhaps you could describe how you've been going about that?
So I've been using an iPad and an Apple Pencil, and the program called Procreate, which is what I showed you those graphics on. It's a really powerful piece of software. It's about £10 to buy it, but it's a game changer, really. In terms of what you can do on the iPad, I find it now it's going to be hard to go back to paper, because it's so much more easy to use. You know, you can move things around, you can delete things, erase things, make things bigger or smaller. So in terms of, you can have layers and stuff like that. You can insert photos. You can do whatever you want. So it does make it a lot easier, probably, and it's a lot more. I think the colours are maybe a bit more vivid, a bit brighter, because it's digital. You can then email it to everyone really quickly, rather than having a photo of it on your phone, which might not always be ideal. And then, you know, it's a very different situation, but it's working really well. So I definitely recommend Procreate and having a pencil. The pencil is such a good stylus. The other ones that I've tried, just a general like Bluetooth stylus, is just not as accurate and is not as smooth in terms of when you're drawing. So definitely recommend that one.
Okay. And do you tend, I'm just thinking in terms of the screen and things, do you share screen just on the visual and just have the visual up, or can you see people in the meeting at the same time when you do it online?
Yeah, so I'll sometimes have multiple devices open. So I'll have a laptop where I'm in the Zoom meeting and I can see everyone, and I can see on the iPad, I'm just sharing my screen. So all I can see on the iPad screen is the graphic itself. But because I'm sharing it, I can then see it on my laptop over here. Or if we are doing something which is involving a training session, I might have the slides on the screen, and then I'll be doing a graphic over here. And then when it comes to sharing the graphic doesn't always need to be shared, right? So you might be just taking notes while a slide is on the screen. So Colin might be talking about a slide, and then people might be feeding back, and I'll be writing everything down, and then it will come back, and Colin will be like to me, oh, do you want to share the graphic now? And then I'll just take over the screen and share the feedback that I've taken. So we kind of do it like that. It's a bit of a dance between us, you know, who's sharing the screen at the time.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And that flows quite well in terms of online?
Yeah, when you get used to the dance, as
yeah.
It is quite nice. People quite like it as they're speaking, especially if they're feeding back their ideas for a dream or their ideas around an activity that we might be doing as part of the training, to see the graphic coming to life, and the graphic kind of literally writing up their ideas as the ideas are said. That has the power that you would normally get of the graphic physically in the room. Really kind of reminds people of that. Perfect handout as well at the end. People really like them. And there's time at the end as well to kind of refine them a bit, to just sort of put the finishing touches on, or colour them, add the colour, or get that just right.
Great.
So
yeah, I love that idea of being able to share it quite quickly and widely, which is, it's key of person-centered planning, isn't it? Is kind of having that impact quickly. So
we can email them straight out. So there's all that utility. You can put them online. You can do so much with them really. So that they are very useful. But what about people who are not using Apple stuff, Elliot? Because people have talked about using Microsoft products.
There's various things like the Surface Pro is really good, and it's got a stylus I think with it already, which is probably a really good piece of hardware. But I'm not sure about what programs to use on that. Probably just Google it, see if there's any really good sketching software. You just need anything that is capable of sketching or like graphic design kind of software. Yeah, I'd say Google it. There's a lot of people talking about this kind of stuff right now because everyone is having to go digital with a lot of stuff because of COVID and everything. So yeah, there's a lot of talk about this kind of stuff online.
I think some people might have even tried to kind of video themselves on a piece of paper doing the graphic, but it's tough.
Not very good.
It's tough to get that, to make that come across clearly and accurately on screen. I think this use of Procreate seems to be the most effective way we've seen so far, but obviously open to any other practice.
Great. And have you found that there's been any particular challenges to this remote way of working, and like how have you overcome them, or been able to adapt?
Another great question. I mean, there are challenges, obviously. I mean, the biggest challenge is you can't see people, and especially people who turn the cameras off, or so they can't activate the video for whatever reason. That's a major challenge, because usually when you're running person-centered planning events for real, I mean, certainly when you're running the process, you're forever scanning the group. You're looking at people's faces. You're reading the sort of small inflections in people's faces. You're kind of taking the emotional temperature really in different points. And obviously you can quick to spot this distress or irritation or amusement. You can just spot those things. But when you're on Zoom or Teams, of course, even when you do see a bunch of faces, you're not seeing everybody. So that, I would say that's a massive issue, really. And initially, that was giving me a big concern about whether we should be even doing it at all, really, for that reason. But so far, touch wood, as far as we know, it's been going well. But because you won't always know, that's the other worry, isn't it? You just don't know because you just don't see the faces. So that's the biggie, really, just not seeing people, not feeling the atmosphere, not sensing the atmosphere. But I think everyone who's been involved with this kind of online discourse with children or with adults would recognise that. That's a massive challenge, isn't it, really? But that's certainly a biggie for person-centered planning, which kind of really, it's built on the personal element, really, isn't it? It's such, as the title suggests, really person-centered. So, but as far as we can, by keep checking in, I suppose that's the biggest thing we've done, keep checking in, asking people to turn the videos on, asking people direct questions, especially key players if it's person-centered planning. We've done quite a lot of direct questioning. Elliot, sorry?
Yeah, some of the, a big part of person-centered planning in real life, in the real world, is sort of preparing in advance and creating an atmosphere that the young person is really going to respond well to. So finding out what their favourite snacks are, favourite music, and putting some of those snacks on everyone's seat when they enter the room, and playing their favourite songs as they enter the room or throughout the session. And that it's kind of difficult to do that over Zoom. So those are the kind of little things that you're missing out on. So we can't wait to get back to doing it in the real world. But at the same time, realize that there's a lot of benefits to doing it online. So you can do really long distance work. So you can be doing this with someone in Australia or something like that, whereas you wouldn't be able to do that in the real world, even if you paid a lot of money.
Yeah, we did this over. We did work with people in New Zealand and Australia.
Brilliant.
And the States.
So in terms of it being accessible, I guess it can be, you're kind of working in areas that maybe wouldn't have been possible with the length of travel and costs, and
And back on our community circles, we had somebody from South America and somebody from Australia attending, and everybody else was from Nottingham. I mean, how cool is that?
Great.
So yeah, that was kind of fun.
We've done work with a language barrier as well. We worked with a bunch of Greek people, and they had somebody translating everything that was said during the training. So that was really interesting to do that as well, and without any travel costs.
Yeah,
that was Greek parents. It was focused on Greek parents, wasn't it, really, who were in lockdown, us, and they were wanting support from ourselves, and they also had they had a live translator, but they also had like a translation coming up at the bottom as well, kind of scrolling, which would again in the real world would be much tougher to do. But they laid that on. That was quite interesting.
Great. And what about, I'm just thinking in terms of the software that we use to do remote working, what about things like the chat function? Do you notice that sometimes that could be a benefit in the sense of some people can express themselves a bit more through the chat function? Or
thanks for reminding us, Ellen, because we use that a lot actually, the chat function. It's really useful if you want a lot of feedback quickly from people, especially in larger groups. So on large training events, it's really, really rich. And we just ask the question, whatever it might be, that we'd usually ask the group to maybe just buzz around, and then you can get everybody responding potentially, everybody who wants to. So, and with person-centered planning, similarly. So, say we're in a section like how we're going to build strength, particularly if time was running a bit tight, or you hadn't got time to put people back in the groups, you can simply say to people, how are we going to build strength around Ellen? Put your ideas into the chat really, and just fire them out. And then I'd probably just read them back, or ask somebody from the group to read them back out. So Elliot gets 2 chances to hear them again, or see them, read them and hear them. And then he can kind of graphic them. So yeah, that works really, really well, actually.
It's that real sense of participation, isn't it? Even though it's online. Yeah.
Yes.
That's that bit I always dread, because it gets so much feedback that it's hard to keep up with it all. That's a lot of rich feedback.
Which is, I suppose, one of the tips really is making sure somebody's reading it as well as it. So don't just rely on the graphic person just to simply write it down. It's kind of a bit too tough on them really, because then time will be on and we'll be on to the next step. It's quite tough.
I guess that sort of dual role helps, doesn't it? I mean, you always say never dive alone, don't you? So there's that example.
It wouldn't be possible, to be honest. I could never do a graphic and run the meeting at the same time. It just wouldn't be possible.
Yeah.
It would all end in tears. So if anybody's watching this thinking, maybe I could just do this on my own, I'm here, I've got a great computer, I've got my iPad all set up. You'll disappear without trace.
Don't even bother.
Disappear into the ether without trace.
So it sounds like there's been some real benefits in terms of kind of online and remote working and accessibility of it. And you talked a bit about person-centered planning and paths and maps and things. What else have you been able to kind of offer or use the remote kind of offerings? What else have you been able to do?
Well, one thing, of course, is our problem-solving work, the Circle of Adults process, the Solution Circle, and the Insights and Solutions Circles processes. Turns out they lend themselves really well to this way of working, actually. So in Suffolk, for instance, they're offering a staged approach to meeting the complex needs, including the most sort of challenging behaviour and SEMH kind of needs. And they are finding they've actually built the Solution Circle, the Insights and Solution Circle, and the Circle of Adults into their staged approach. So that's just one local authority. But we've also in our training been able to offer those approaches and demonstrate the processes live. So that's been great, actually. That's been great. And again, good use of the chat function. As soon as you get to the creative box, you can have people shooting out loads and loads of ideas, and they can type them up, and they can put the live link, the website link, the resource link, the book link, whatever it might be. So that's kind of useful as well. So certainly the problem solving. We've talked about and certainly training. We've done a training now kind of on almost every element of stuff we would usually be training face to face with people. Funnily enough, I was most reluctant to do keys to inclusion training, because it was so hearts and minds and such a strong emotional element. And yet we have had a lot of success with that, actually. People have still been able to be quite moved online and engage with their hearts as well as their heads. And in fact, only this afternoon, we're in Wolverhampton running a kind of series on their work on inclusion. So even that process, even though you're going to deliberately go much deeper than you usually would, again, because of the use of the breakout rooms and the interactive nature, we've been able to run a range of training, haven't we, when you think about it?
All of it, really, and probably more. We developed more training through the past couple of years that we hadn't even done before. So we've done a training around racism and anti-racism, that kind of thing, where we hadn't really tackled that before. It's obviously a lot more relevant this year than last year, and we've kind of developed webinars where we can actually host a webinar without having to sort of organize in advance and just put it out online and see who shows up. and just accept like donations, which was what we were doing throughout the pandemic. That's something that we did, like a monthly series on what did you call it? Loving the time of COVID, something like that. And these was like a series of webinars where we just opened it up to the public and get whoever we get. Where usually we wouldn't work like that. We'd usually work as, you know, we've got this event coming up for this particular group of people, and we're going to do a specific thing for them. So this is kind of giving us a bit of creative freedom, really, to just kind of do new things.
I think it was inclusion.
Creative freedom, that sounds great.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Yeah, it was inclusion in the time of COVID, but it was based on that love in the time of cholera. That's my Kes book, really. That kind of inspired us. But I'll tell you what, it's interesting on the creative freedom, and in a way it took us to a place we wouldn't usually do, which was much shorter sessions. So like for an hour and a half, 2 hours, what can you get in there? And in Nottinghamshire, for instance, they had us running twilights for staff. So literally at 3:30, we were straight in there with a 2-hour twilight on a range of quite challenging topics, you know, from format to attachment, some quite sort of deep issues. What can you tell us in 2 hours on this, kind of, but done in our kind of interactive style? So that was quite interesting as well. And as Alex said, the kind of open, free for all, come along if you want to come, were interesting as well. And all of this also fed into our online school, which is quite nice. So we've created this kind of online inclusive solutions school with about 40 plus courses in it now. Self-paced learning, this is really. So we created them. Often at the heart there was kind of an interactive session that had taken place. Then we threw in resources, activities, and ideas, and so people can kind of access those. You're on you're one of our subscribers right now, Lynn, yourself, aren't you?
I am, yeah, and I like to just, you're able just to dip in, and there might be a topic of particular interest, or just to have a look at some of the graphics that are used and kind of practice that side of it as well. So it's a great resource, yeah. And if people wanted to, either access the online school or yourselves, or for some remote working, how would they do that? What would they have to do? Well,
the main website's inclusive-solutions.com. That is the main one. And for the I could show you I'll just show you this actually for the online school if I could. So this is the online school. This is kind of what it looks like. This is for the self-paced learning courses, just in case anybody's interested. Again, you can see what kind of range of possibilities that are up there, really. Anything from race to autism to mental health, lots on person-centered planning, as you might have guessed. But if people want to access it, this is the longer website for our Inclusive Solutions School and the teachable courses. So it's cool up there. There's the QR code, if you like QR codes, and that'll take us straight to it.